Hello, my girlie. Welcome to Talks with SAE, the only late night, thought provoking, giggle inducing podcast for my ladies whose days melt into their nights. My girlie, have you ever felt like life keeps flipping your world upside down and somehow you're just supposed to have it all figured out, but you actually don't? Well, tonight we're diving into how to navigate those messy, overwhelming life transitions without losing yourself or your mind. So I always say the only guarantee in this life is change. And the thing about change in this life is that it always has this way of just sneaking up on us, right? One minute you're settled, you're feeling like you've got things figured out, and then in a blink of an eye, everything is shifting. Maybe it's a new city, a career pivot, or the end of a relationship. These moments can make you feel like the ground underneath you is falling apart, leaving you wondering and asking yourself, what am I supposed to do now? What is this? What is happening? How am I supposed to get through all of this? And the thing about change in this life is that it's inevitable. It's inevitable. Life doesn't stay still. It evolves and we have to evolve with it, even if we don't want to. Moving forward in life often means leaving something behind or leaving someone behind. And that's where things get tricky. That's where things can get messy. That's when things can get really depressing. Even if what you're letting go or who you're letting go of wasn't perfect, it was familiar. And we cling to the familiar because it feels safe, even when it's not serving us anymore. Think about all the friendships or relationships that you stayed in that you knew you should have not been in. But something we don't often talk about is that life and its transitions aren't about the external changes. They mess with our sense of who we are. If your identity has always been wrapped in being successful or reliable, what happens when a change challenges that? Maybe you've always been the person who has it all together, but now you're in a season of your life where you're fumbling, trying to figure things out. That feeling of disorientation, that's not failure, that's growth in disguise. I mean, think about it. As humans, we're wired to seek stability, but life is anything but stable, my girlie. Seasons change, people come and go, careers shift, relationships have their ebbs and flows. Resisting that is like trying to hold back a tide, for lack of a better example. It's exhausting and ultimately it's impossible. So, what if instead of resisting, we leaned into the idea that life and its transitions are an invitation for us to grow, for us to adapt, for us to rediscover parts of ourselves we didn't know were there, for us to fall in love with life all over again, however many times we want to fall in love with life again. And I know it's not easy to embrace that perspective when you're in the middle of all of these changes. Trust me, I know the uncertainty can feel overwhelming. It can feel exhausting. It can feel depressing. It can create so much anxiety, so much stress. But sometimes it helps to look back at a past transition you've gone through. Maybe it felt like chaos in the moment, right? But when you reflect on it now, you can see how it shaped you. Maybe it made you stronger. It made you more compassionate. It made you more aligned with what you truly want. Or maybe it made you see reality for once. Maybe before you were seeing things and experiencing life through rose-colored glasses, but now you see the truth. And there's actually research to back all of this up. Psychologists have talked about something called post-traumatic growth, it's essentially the idea that challenges and transitions can lead to positive psychological changes. And it's not about denying the struggle or those traumatic experiences. It's about finding the growth on the other side of those experiences, those moments that, stretch you and shake you. Those are often the very moments that transform you. And everything I say in this episode, everything I've always said in every episode, has a form of my own experiences in it. But this episode specifically, as a woman who has been shaken up completely this past year, from starting the year genuinely not wanting to wake up and praying to God that I did not wake up the next day, to now reflecting and realizing that everything that I've experienced is leading me closer to where I'm supposed to be. And now who I am, the woman that I am today, tonight as I'm talking to you, has grown so much. So if you yourself are in the middle of a transition right now, if you yourself are finding that so much of your life or one part of your life or every part of your life is changing and it's so chaotic and it's so like you just don't know what to do, what's going to happen. Everything is a big question mark. Please know that you're not alone in feeling this. You're not alone in feeling unsure or overwhelmed or stressed or even depressed. All of that is part of the process. Truly, it is part of the process. And know that this isn't the end of your story. This isn't the end of your journey, but it's the start of something new. It might be messy. It might be uncomfortable. It again might lead to stress, depression, sadness, anxiety, but it's also full of potential. And maybe this shift, these changes, they're exactly what you need to step into the next version of yourself. Life and its changes and its transitions, they have this way of just pulling out every single emotion known to man. One moment you're excited about the possibilities, the next moment you're hit with fear and doubt and even grief. And it's like your emotions are just like playing this like tug of war and you're caught in the middle and you're being stretched so thin by every single emotion and you don't know how to navigate it. And I think the hardest part is feeling like you shouldn't feel this way. Society has this thing where it loves to paint change as this like bold, exciting adventure, new beginnings, fresh starts, and all of that. But the truth is, change is so terrifying. It can feel so terrifying. And if you are either one of these, please know that that's okay. You're allowed to be excited and scared at the same time. You're allowed to have moments of sadness and joy at the same time. Those feelings aren't opposites. Those experiences aren't opposites. They can coexist. The start of this year, the first quarter of this year, I was going through so much and I didn't know how to navigate. For the first time in my life, I genuinely did not know how to navigate my emotions. And there was so much doubt I was experiencing. There was so much grieving I had to do that I was doing, grieving my life, grieving all the losses I was experiencing, grieving the fact that things were so out of my control, grieving the fact that I knew I was never going to be the same again. And I remember like questioning, I remember just asking, what's the point? What's the point? What do I have to look forward to? And now looking back at everything, I realized that those emotions were not something that were supposed to be fixed. They weren't something that were bad. They were part of the process of adjusting to a new reality and adjusting to a change that happened that I wasn't prepared for. But the thing about emotions during these life transitions, during these changes, is that they're trying to tell us something. For example, if you're experiencing fear might be reminding you to tread carefully. And then grief might be honoring what you're letting go of. Even doubt can be a sign that you care really deeply about what's happening. And your goal should never be to suppress your feelings. It should be to listen to them, to experience them without letting them take over in a way that is incredibly detrimental to your health, right? My girlie, have you ever noticed that naming an emotion can make it feel a little less overwhelming? And funny enough, there's actually a reason for that. And when you acknowledge what you're feeling, it loses some of its power to control you. So, instead of I'm a mess, you can say I'm feeling overwhelmed because this is new. Instead of my life is over, you can say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to trust myself. I also don't want to forget the other side of these emotions, the excitement, the hope, the curiosity about what's next. These emotions are just as important and they deserve space for you to feel them and experience them just as much as grief does, just as much as fear does, because they remind you why you're pushing through the discomfort of change, right? They're essentially these little sparks of light that help guide you forward, even when you're uncertain about these new changes that are happening. So if you're riding this emotional roller coaster right now, know that it's normal. You don't have to have it all figured out. Give yourself permission to feel everything, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. And I actually want to talk about our comfort zone for a little bit. You know that saying, life begins at the end of your comfort zone? Yeah, that quote, that saying, it sounds so great on a coffee mug, but my girlie, let's be honest. Leaving your comfort zone is so terrifying. It is so terrifying. It's messy, it's uncomfortable, and it feels like you're stepping off a ledge without knowing where you're gonna land. But growth doesn't happen when we're comfortable at all. The more comfortable you are, the less you'll allow yourself to grow. And growth happens when we're stretched, when we're challenged, when we're pushed into places and experiences we didn't think we could handle. You know, think about it. Every time you've grown as a person, as a woman, wasn't there a little discomfort, a little hesitation involved? Maybe it was speaking up when you were scared, or trying something new, or walking away from something familiar. But very recently, I had a moment where I had to step out of my comfort zone. And it wasn't this like huge dramatic leap or anything like that. It was a small decision that felt so impossibly hard at the time. But making that choice showed me just how much I was capable of. It showed me that like I actually can do this. As scared as I am, as uncomfortable as all of this is, I'm gonna do it. And even when I'm scared, I'm gonna do it. And once I did it, the thing I was afraid of didn't seem so scary anymore. It was still uncomfortable, but it didn't seem so scary anymore. And our comfort zones, they're not really safe places, they're just familiar. That's it. And staying in them too long will start to suffocate you because we trick ourselves into thinking that avoiding discomfort will keep us happy. But the reality is, it keeps us stuck. It keeps us stagnant. The growth, the possibilities, the good in life, it happens when we're willing to lean into the uncertainty, into the discomfort. And when you decide to take those steps, don't forget to celebrate them. Acknowledge your courage, even if that step feels small. Because every time you push past a fear, every time you push past hesitation, you're proving to yourself that you can handle more than you thought. If you're on the edge of your comfort zone right now, wondering if it's worth the risk, wondering if it'll go wrong, wondering, what you're gonna do. Let me tell you, it's worth the risk. You might not know what's on the other side, but you'll never find out if you just stay where you are. You'll never find out if you don't try. And honestly, who knows? My girlie, who knows? Maybe the version of you that's waiting on the other side of that might just be your favorite version of you. Also, have you ever noticed how our mindset shapes the way we experience change? When you have a fixed mindset, you see challenges and changes as threats. Obstacles are roadblocks to you, and failures are proof that you're not enough. And I'm saying this as someone who used to have a fixed mindset. And I don't know if I can say that truly I have a growth mindset, but I know that I'm getting there and I'm making progress towards that mindset. With a growth mindset, these challenges are opportunities. The setbacks are stepping stones. The failures, they're just pauses. And rather than fearing failure, it's become something for me to learn from. And I think when you have this type of mindset, when you push yourself to navigate life and its changes and its ebbs and flows in that way, things get better no matter what. I remember reading something about how people respond to failure, and I can't remember it completely. Hopefully, I'm remembering it correctly. But it was saying something along the lines of people with a growth mindset, they didn't see failure as the end all be all. They saw it as data, as feedback. It wasn't personal to them, it was just part of the process. It didn't define them as individuals. And that has stuck with me until this day. And it truly ignited my views and my perspective on failures, because since I was a kid I always perceived failure, and I was in a way taught that failure meant that I myself was a failure. And now it's not like that. My perspective has changed, and I hope your perspective changes, because think about the last time you faced a transition in your life. Maybe it didn't go as planned, right? Did you beat yourself up for it, or did you look for the lesson in it, or did you do both? I maybe in the future I'll talk more about this, but at one point I had a business, and the business by my standards was thriving. And then as quickly as it thrived, it fell apart. And in the end, I ended up having to close the business because it was failing. Truly, the business itself was failing. But I myself felt like a failure because the business failed. And I went into such a terrible depression that ended up being years actually, of just being like, I'm a failure. Me as an individual, I am a failure. But now when I look back at it, I look at it as a lesson. And there's so many things I learned having had that business and having experienced both sides of that business, right? Seeing the net flow of income being in the greens, seeing the net flow of income being in the reds, the stresses of it, the growth of it, the failure of it, and going from perceiving that business failure as me being a failure to now knowing and understanding that there's so many lessons in that experience. And now I know for me that in the future, if I ever want to try again with the business, I know what to do, what not to do. And those are important things, right? And I just want to say, shifting your mindset, shifting your perspective on things, it's not easy. Shifting from self criticism and self blame to curiosity to trying to understand, it's something that can completely change how you navigate the next step and the next phase. And it's not about pretending that everything's fine. It's about believing that you're capable of figuring it out, even when it's hard. And that's something that I wish I had known earlier on. It starts small. It starts with small intentional shifts in how you think about challenges and how you think about failures and how you think about yourself. One of the things I learned throughout all of this is instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Asking, what can this teach me? Or what is this trying to teach me is so important. It's such an incredible first step. When my business failed, when I literally asked myself, why me? What did I do to deserve this? I did everything right, and then over time I started asking, what was this trying to teach me? What did this experience teach me? What did this business teach me? And it didn't take away the pain I felt. It didn't take away the depression, but it reframed it into something that I could work with, something that I could work through. And a big part of cultivating a growth mindset is self compassion. When you're in the middle of a transition, when you're in the middle of change, it's easy to get caught up in a spiral of, I should have done this differently, or I'm not handling this well enough. But if we're being real here, when has beating yourself up ever made a tough situation easier? Truly. Another way to build this mindset is by focusing on what's within your control. You might not be able to change your circumstances, but you can control how you're responding to them, how you're navigating them. It could be something as simple as choosing to take a deep breath before reacting, or setting a boundary that protects your peace. Those small actions, they add up, and over time they reinforce the belief that you're capable of navigating whatever comes your way. And that's what the growth mindset is, right? Something I also want to mention is, please do not underestimate the power of gratitude during these changes. I'm not saying that you have to be thankful for every hard thing that happens, because that's silly. Some changes are just hard and they're terrible. There's usually small things to be grateful for. For example, having a supportive friend, or finally learning that lesson so that life doesn't repeat it for you again. Even just in the resilience you're building as a person, as a woman, those are things to be grateful for. Just because you're grateful, just because you are practicing gratitude, that doesn't erase your struggle. It doesn't erase your experiences, but it definitely shifts your focus towards what's still good. So, my girlie, if you are navigating change right now and it's a big question mark for you, take a moment to check in with your mindset. Are you approaching these changes or this transition with curiosity? Or are you holding yourself back with fear or self doubt? Or are you trying to find a balance between the two? Remember that your mindset isn't set in stone. It's something that you can change. It's something that you can grow. It's something that you can nurture. Because at the end of the day, I truly believe your mindset is the most powerful tool for navigating change. That is what makes the art of change an art, right? It doesn't mean the journey will be easy. It's probably not going to be easy, but it can mean that you'll come out stronger, you'll come out wiser, and you'll come out more prepared to handle whatever life throws your way because the life is going to keep lifing. Um, and that made me think of something I've never really seen talked about when it comes to change, and that's grief. In theory, change is exciting. New beginnings, fresh starts, possibilities. But in reality, change, even when it's for the better, it brings a sense of loss. And with that loss comes grief. It's so easy to overlook this part because we're conditioned to push forward and to embrace the positives. But the truth is, grief is natural and it's necessary when you're navigating life's changes. Change in any form always means leaving behind something familiar. So maybe for you, that's a job that you've outgrown, a relationship that's ended, or even a city that once felt like home but isn't home anymore. Whatever it is, there's a certain grief that accompanies saying goodbye to what was, even if the change is something you wanted. And it's not just about mourning what's lost, but what's left behind. Your comfort, your sense of certainty, and even maybe a part of your identity. All of those things get left behind as well. And one of the hardest things about grieving changes in our life is the pressure to move on and to get over it quickly. People expect you to be excited about the next chapter, and there's often this unspoken rule that if you're grieving, you're somehow not being strong or resilient or you're ungrateful. But grief doesn't follow a timeline. You can't control it. I've learned that it's okay to mourn the loss of the old chapter. Even when the next one is waiting for you, even when that new door is opening, it's okay to mourn that you are closing another door. When you let yourself feel the sadness or discomfort or hesitation, you're acknowledging that you've been through something significant. You're not just pushing through, you're healing. You're not just bottling it all in so that one day it explodes. You're allowing it. You're allowing yourself to experience it. And once you've acknowledged that grief, I promise you'll begin to see it for what it is. And that's an opportunity for transformation. That actually brings me to talk about uncertainty. When it comes to life's changes, uncertainty and hesitation are guaranteed. And it's easy to think of uncertainty as a roadblock, something that holds you back from feeling confident or prepared. But it's actually one of the most powerful aspects of change because it's in those moments when we don't know what's next that we often find the greatest opportunities for growth, that we often have the best experiences and the best memories. When you're facing a transition, there's this feeling that you need to have it all figured out. The job, the place to live, the next relationship, everything needs to be perfectly planned out, perfectly mapped out, or at least that's what we're taught to believe. But life doesn't work like that. You plan and God laughs. You plan and the universe laughs. None of us can see into the future. We can't. And if you wait until everything is certain, until everything is perfect, you might be waiting forever. And I'm speaking from experience. There is beauty in uncertainty because it invites you to like step into the unknown with curiosity rather than fear. And I think that's so wonderful because it allows you to like tap into your inner child. You know how like one of the reasons why I admire kids so much is because they're so curious. They look at life through curiosity, not fear. And I think that's how we should approach change. That's how we should approach life way more often, is through curiosity. There's something really liberating knowing about not knowing what's next. You know, when you let go of the need for absolute control and absolute perfection, you really allow yourself to experience life in its raw form. And that is really, really beautiful because you start making decisions based on what feels right in the moment, not based on fear. And your decisions that you're making become based on trusting that the answers will just unfold as you move forward. So rather than seeing uncertainty as something to fear or something to avoid, look at it as an adventure. When's the last time you went on an adventure? Truly, look at it that way and then document it. And the thing about change is because it's so uncertain, because no matter how much you plan, it doesn't always go as planned. And because it can be such a big question mark, we don't trust our intuition as women. More of us really, really need to start trusting our intuition more. We've all had those moments where you're unsure of where to go next, where to turn, and you feel that nagging feeling of uncertainty, that fear, that hesitation, all of it creeping in. And so you look around and you seek advice from everyone else, from your friends, your family. But through all of that noise, you ignore your intuition. And science has literally proved our intuition is valid. And instead of trusting your intuition, you go and you seek advice and validation from everything and everywhere else, right? And when we're going through transitions in life, it's so common to question ourselves. We doubt our ability to navigate the unknown. And maybe that's you know, where you look to others for reassurance, for validation, trying to find someone who can tell you that you're doing the right thing. But the thing is, your intuition has been with you from the beginning. It's always been there, guiding you, and it's way more reliable than we give it credit for. The really interesting thing about our intuition as women is that it speaks through your feelings. Maybe it's that gut feeling when something feels right, or the sense of peace that comes over you when you know what needs to be done. Trusting your intuition doesn't mean everything will be perfectly clear right away. It's really about having faith in the process, even when you can't see the entire path in front of you. It's like standing on the edge of something new and knowing deep down that it's the right moment to take that leap, even without knowing exactly what's waiting for you on the other side of that leap, right? Think about those times when something just felt right, even when you couldn't explain why, it just felt right. That just felt right feeling, that's your intuition speaking to you. It's your mind and body working together to guide you, often more clearly than logic by itself could. And the trick here is learning to really recognize those moments and trust them and trust yourself. You know, yes, it can be hard to tune out external noise and the endless advice from others, but there's also wisdom within you that knows the direction you need to take. And the more you trust your inner voice, the more you trust your intuition, the clearer things become for you. And trusting yourself doesn't mean you'll never feel nervous or unsure or hesitant or scared. You know, it's about having confidence and trust that you're capable of figuring things out, no matter how uncertain the path ahead may seem for you. So, you might be wondering, how do you actually trust your intuition more? Truly, it's really simple. All you have to do is give yourself permission to listen, to stop seeking constant validation from others and start recognizing the subtle messages your body is sending you. Or maybe it's a feeling in your chest when you think about a new direction, or a sense of calm that comes over you when you're about to make a tough choice. Trust that these feelings are your intuition guiding you. When you start to tune into those moments and those signals, you'll find that the next step becomes clearer for you, and you'll feel more confident taking that next step. And As we wrap up tonight's season finale, I want to leave you with one last thing, and that is, my girlie, you already have everything you need to navigate life's changes. Truly, you have it. Life's uncertainties, life's transitions, they may feel overwhelming at times, but the beauty is that you don't have to have everything figured out right now. Trust yourself, trust your process, trust your journey, and take that next step. Take it with hesitation, take it with fear. Just take it. Because when you listen to your intuition, you're allowing yourself to flow with the changes ahead instead of fighting against them. All right, my girlie, we've dived into the ups and downs of life's changes. We've talked about trusting yourself and really embracing the uncertainty that comes with change. So take a moment to reflect on how you handle change and the role your intuition plays in navigating these shifts. Of course, to help with this, I've created a free growth timeline guide just for you. It's an incredible visual guide that helps you track key moments of personal growth so you can celebrate how far you've come. You can find this free resource in the show notes or in the YouTube description box. To close out our time this evening and our time this season, please remember you absolutely have the strength within you to embrace and navigate whatever life throws your way. And that's it for tonight's episode, my girlie. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm so glad to have you on this journey. If you've enjoyed this episode, go ahead and tap that follow or subscribe button and leave a review. It lets me and the algorithms know you're really here to grow, learn, and say. You can also find me and Talks with SAE on Instagram at Talks with SAE. And be sure to share this episode and the podcast with your girlies so they can say it as well. Again, thank you, my girlie, for joining me, and more importantly, thank you for existing. Until next time, self-love bells.